Hi everyone, I'm Curtis. I'm an associate professor at the University of Washington. I'm going to talk to you about the promise and pitfalls of on-device LLMs for conservation work. So as mentioned, I'm an associate professor of computer science and do not generally work in conservation areas. Instead, I run the ICTD lab, which largely focuses on technology and poverty alleviation, usually rural internet access, but other kind of topics. However, a few years ago, I had a student working with Jess on a project using EarthRanger, and I thought it was a really exciting area. So I was like, hey Jess, what else do you have for me? And he kind of kicked off this project for us. I'll note that this is joint work with Microsoft, specifically Microsoft Research and Vaishnavi over there helping out. So what's the project? So the essential premise here is that we want to help out the field staff using EarthRanger. You know, these are folks that are kind of the beating heart of conservation, out there doing the work, out there tracking animals, removing snares, all that kind of stuff. And EarthRanger as an organization, that's been a big focus of theirs, right? And the move to online or mobile data collection has really sped up their processes. But it's still difficult, and it's still difficult in a number of important ways. When people are in dangerous situations, bad weather, highly mobile in a car, all of those are areas where EarthRanger regularly has people doing data collection, and it's still hard to do on a mobile app. So the core question we came across was, how can we start to use some of the AI technologies to help these folks out? And the idea here is use LLMs, which you might know, this is ChatGPT, this is Gemini, those sort of things, to help them. And these are systems that are largely understood to ease labor, make things easier. And so what would it look like in this particular context? So the core of the project was, hey, let's see if we can use these to speed up field data collection. Now, I don't need to go too much over EarthRanger. We obviously know who they are. But I wanted to talk through a little bit of just what it looks like for data collection if people haven't seen that from sort of the user side. Right? There is some form here, and it gets filled out, and it has some constraints on it. Right? So a species will have a drop-down with a set of species that are allowed to be used. You might have a count, and it has to be a number, all this sort of stuff. So people come in, and they see stuff, and they come in, they hit some buttons, and they fill out the form, and that gets uploaded into the cloud and gets used by the data analysts to make decisions and move stuff around inside the system. But as a big piece of the way that we do work in the ICTD lab is that we work with partners. And so we reached out to Jess and said, hey, who are some EarthRanger users that we can go observe and understand how they actually use the platform in order to make a more informed technical product? And he pointed us at two. The first one is Panthera, which I learned from yesterday's session operates about 30 different sites at the moment, doing big cat observations. And so we actually collaborated particularly with the Olympic Cougar Project. This is a group that collaborates with First Nations out in Washington State, so super close to us, which is really, really helpful, doing genetic diversity, human-wildlife conflict, and other sort of interactions with the system. In particular, their field staff go out to visit activity sites, and which are what are called clusters. So basically, they have trackers on the cats. The cats go around. If you see a cat in an area for a long time, something's happened there. And so the field staff go out and figure out what was going on and make a record inside of EarthRanger for that. As part of that, we actually joined them. Again, this is known as participant observation, and went out and looked at what this was like. We didn't get permission from the people, so unfortunately we have little smiley faces, but they're wonderful. And then you can see Cynthia, who's the actual lead graduate student on this project, and Emmanuel from my lab going out to join them. It was really cool to just observe this process and how they use EarthRanger, because they were explaining it's a very wet environment, there's a lot of rain, there are all the kind of problems that we had talked through. But as someone who's a technical researcher and not from a conservation domain, it was neat to see people really nerding out about cats. They were like down there like smelling things and figuring out different types of hair, and the devotion is there. Similarly, we were also pointed to Giraffe Conservation Foundation. These were folks that do giraffes all throughout Africa. In particular, we worked with the Etosha Heights Project out of Namibia. They similarly do giraffe counts throughout the area, specifically between game farms and national parkland. In this, I think I have the follow-up slide, we similarly went out to the field to understand their use cases, and it was interestingly different. So here you have a lot more automobiles, so they drive around and take photos of the giraffes in order to understand how they're being, or where they're moving and other such properties about the giraffes. And similarly use EarthRanger to gather both the photos as well as the related information around and put those into the system. This led us to this diagram, which is effectively the way we mapped out the way that EarthRanger is used in practice. What you can see at the top is, of course, that the field staff use the EarthRanger mobile app. Those generate data, which says it goes back to the cloud, which then the technical and science staff or the analysts look at that and decide and make different changes for the field staff in order to look at new pieces of how they want to change the system. What was really interesting to us, as we learned, was the role of the EarthRanger product team in this. The diversity of the work that you all do is amazing. And it makes it really hard for there to be kind of a well-worn path. And that's something that we'll take into account when we build out our system. So through these works, we came up with a couple important design considerations for the system that we wanted to build. The first was that we really needed to integrate into these workflows. People are using an enormous amount of tools. I think you see that with the SMART-EarthRanger Alliance of just trying to simplify the space for the field staff because they have so many different things going on at the same time. Interestingly, one decision we made was offline access. The places we were working didn't have internet access. And so we needed something that ran locally on the phone to be able to support this. And this is known as sometimes edge compute or offline or local LLMs, which are possible but significantly lower power than the kind of cloud ones that you see elsewhere. And then we wanted to provide a mechanism for error correction. So this is the field staff, for instance, expected there to be errors both from themselves as well as from the LLMs, and they wanted a mechanism to be able to fix that in the data collection step and not later. I just want to briefly shout out Justin Steventon at CyberTracker, who I chatted with yesterday, who has a really cool system that does use ChatGPT instead. So if that's an environment where you do have good connectivity, his solution is really great. He's got a really cool demo of a very similar thing going on. So find him, he's around here. Oh, that's supposed to be a skip slide. The system that we eventually developed looks like this. First we have what is the Whisper prompt. Whisper is an OpenAI speech-to-text system that you're allowed to tune. So we went in and we tuned that for the specific words that were used. The notable one is scat. It's not a thing normal people say, but in conservation spaces, it's the most common, a very common word, right? So we had to tune it so that it was pretty good at picking those up. So you go in, you talk to the application, and this is again in the EarthRanger form filling out system, and it generates this system prompt. The person looks at this, makes sure there's no errors that they want to immediately correct, and they move it on to the LLM, which is fine-tuned from these specific form elements that are generated. From there, you're able to actually have it fill out the form for you, which again, as a user, you look at it, make sure that it does everything you want, is all correct, then ship it off and go. Now, we did notice a number of issues with this that we're still working through. This is what's fun as a computer science researcher. These are the things that excite us. The first one is just the power and heat required for this. Like your mobile phone, even if you have a really good one, it still consumes a lot of power to do this inference on the phone. And so we kind of expected that. Heat was more surprising to us. The GCF folks in particular mentioned that their phones often overheat simply being on their dash, and maybe it's just a hot place. Now, if you're going to be running an LLM on the edge doing that at the same time, that'll be even more problematic. But it's our hope, and we understand in general, that this will just improve over time, especially as you have new custom chips inside of the phones that are more efficient around these particular inference tasks. So we're hoping that gets better over time. A second piece of this that popped out were new requirements on the sort of internal workflows here. Specifically, now that we need to have a specific model for each form and fine-tune that model for each form, this is now work that needs to be done. In a good sense, though, that is work that can be done in the cloud by EarthRanger. It is not an enormous amount of work. It does require some compute and some inference, but luckily AI2 has plenty of AI infrastructure and can probably do that for us in the longer term. So lastly, these are kind of the conclusions of where we're at right now and observations we saw for stuff going into the future. First, we really did notice that this is useful for working and hiking alone, but we noticed also that a number of field staff work in pairs. This is sometimes for security, specifically GCF mentioned having another person in case of lions and the like, but sometimes just for camaraderie. So one person does the observation, the other one does the data entry, seems like a pretty common pattern. And maybe we want to build something that supports that pattern instead of expecting people to just do this all on their own. Second, we did notice that this really does reduce the time to complete it. We saw that specifically with Panthera. It's much faster to do the audio version. And maybe there's other opportunities, and we're all ears up here for where this stuff might be useful in order to speed up some of the workflows. And lastly, there was a large amount of data, basically observations from the field staff that just go unrecorded right now. Panthera had this great example of like wanting to record roadkill, but they don't have an event for that right now. And so we're really interested in maybe using LLMs to help people out in gathering unstructured data and being able to look over it later. And so that's something that we're exploring. Key to note, the reason I'm here is because I want to meet you. So we'd really like your perspectives on all this stuff, places where you think this might be useful. And so please come and talk with us, either at the exhibitions desk, where we're going to be running a demo tomorrow, so please come and see it, or just at coffee if you want to grab me. Time zones aside, I'll try to be energetic. So yeah, please come see us, and otherwise, thank you very much.